I don't know if I talk about politics anymore. I was having a conversation with somebody recently about what I do online, and usually when I talk to somebody new about and they ask what I post, I keep it simple and I say politics. But I'm having a really hard time saying that anymore. Like many of you, for the last few days, I've just been sick to my stomach and completely disillusioned with what we're seeing in these files. As a parent, I just want to cry every time I think of these little ones in these horrific situations. And I really don't think anything can be worse. I'd take ICE dragging me out of my house any day over these poor little kids having to suffer anymore. I'm not over exaggerating when I say that it's worse than any of the worst moments in human history. Our world is quite literally run by pedophile baby murderers. And this would be enough, but there's still thousands of kids suffering in Sudan. Children are still dying and living in a dystopian hell in Gaza. And more children in this country are going hungry and being neglected and abused every single day. And then even for the children that make it through all this, the future is just so bleak. The existential threat of climate change is something that we don't even have the capacity to talk about anymore. And AI is creating a situation where, for the first time in human history, the rich won't need humans to be rich anymore. All this while the majority of this country can't even begin to comprehend any of this. It's not just politics anymore. And I'm not sure it ever really was, but we were living in a dream world there for a little while where we could compartmentalize because of our privilege. And by we, I don't mean you specifically. I'm more talking about my type. How can I even talk about things like Congress putting body cams on agents or interest rates? Children are suffering at an unimaginable scale, and we're about to put thousands more into concentration camps in this country. Now, as many of you know, I personally am an ex-conservative evangelical, essentially. What I usually tell people is that I followed Jesus out of the church and out of the Republican Party. Not that he was ever there to begin with, but you get the point. In 2016, I just couldn't understand how my former colleagues couldn't see what I was seeing. And I think that's what's motivated my mission, if you will, over the years. I spent 15 years in Republican politics. I thought I could convince people to wake up. And for many I have, but that spigot is running dry. See, over the years, my faith became something much more practical, and I no longer veered from the progress of mankind, and it became more grounded in reality. I almost lost my faith a few times and started to see it, nonetheless, as more of a, combined with other faiths even, more of a practical foundation for how I act towards others. So no longer concerned with existential spiritual battles, not even sure I believed in them anymore. My faith became more agnostic. It was as if I followed the great philosopher, Jesus Christ. I didn't run completely because I didn't see anyone else that presented and lived out that kind of self-sacrificial love. So sacrificial that he would even give his life for his enemies. It was a radical love that I just couldn't get away from, but started to see a little less of a need for it. Maybe things just could get better if we just work together and trust the long arc of progress. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I've reverted back, because I definitely haven't. But I'm starting again to see clearly the need for that kind of self-sacrificial love. The stuff that we're seeing in these files is a level of depravity that I just don't think is explainable through human psychology. I don't think it's the kind of behavior that you can explain the origins of from an anthropological, sociological, or psychological perspective. I'm starting to believe in the presence of true evil again. From the second that Trump came on the political scene, my little indoctrinated evangelical feelers started flaring up. This was the kind of person I was told to watch out for since I was a little kid. In fact, I had never seen somebody this antithetical to the person of Jesus Christ. Now, I know many of you right now are thinking, oh no, Tony's gone crazy and he thinks Trump's the Antichrist, just like a lot of other people on here right now. But one thing I've learned over the years is that you can't be certain about anything. And the language of biblical prophecies is just too vague and misapplied to make anything other than fictional bestsellers. That being said, I do think there's something more going on here. And of course, it's not sudden because a lot of this evil has been going on for a long time. It may be a privileged position to say that things are worse than they've ever been. But there is a darkness over the world right now that I know many of you can feel. It's beyond anything that we can see inside of ourselves. It's external and existential. Forces of evil that continue to build power despite so much working against them. What I can tell you is it doesn't scare me. It is a pervasive darkness, but it's also blatantly weak and projects weakness. An evil that's too afraid of someone like me because I don't care what they do to me. So they prey on the weak and the vulnerable. With their tiny little fingers, they use money and influence to compensate. I just refuse to believe thinking that these poor kids will never receive justice. They have to in this life or the next, and I believe more strongly now that there is a next. That someday these monsters will be at the mercy of the children whose childhood they stole. And that gives me, and I hope it gives others, comfort. You might think it's fake comfort, and it still may be. But if this kind of evil is capable of existing, I have to think an overwhelming good also exists, and that in the end will be okay.